We are at the point in the week where I'd like to just talk through our selection with you. It will be a lot shorter than we would have done in class, and that's always hard for me. You guys know I like to yak and talk with you about what we read, but we're going to do a walkthrough anyway. I'm just hoping to bring some better understanding. So we had here a biography, the true story of someone's life, but because this is a book written for children, it really does focus on the younger years of Thomas Edison. If you were really interested in his life as an adult and all of the many inventions and things that he became famous for, you would want to find a different biography that is excuse me, geared towards him in his later years. So, in order to write a biography like this, the author, of course, would have needed to do some research, right? He would have needed to look up things and study and travel, even going to his birthplace. It sounds like the train station where Edison worked as a boy, visited a museum, the house that houses many of Edison's amazing inventions. You would want to experience those things firsthand before you took on writing a book like this. It would help it make it more authentic and interesting. Details are very important in a biography. If someone wants to read a biography about someone's life, they're reading it because they want those details and they want to know those things. So, of course, the story starts and tells you about where Edison was born. He's born in Ohio. 7 children in his family. He's the baby, and they like to call him Young Al. So Thomas Alva Edison, and they called him Al. There was no electricity. He was born in the 1800s, 1847. So he grew up as a child without electrical things around him. And so we learn that right away. And then they kind of include a fun painting of him. Now, this whole story is all about his life. Yes, he invents things. Yes, there are certain inventions that he does. But if we think about the main idea, what this story is mostly about, it is focused on his life as a person. It just kind of brings him to life and makes it more personal. So we know that we have this young boy that just had a hunger for experimenting in science topics, and he would do these things. In fact, he had a lab in his basement. They called it a cellar back then. But he had all of the equipment, these test tubes, beakers, and things, and he had a big mess. All right, but he was mixing all of these chemicals, which actually probably was a little bit dangerous. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. But I love this. His mother always encouraged him to ask questions, and he did. What is this? Why does this happen? How does it happen? So his mother, from a very young age, took an interest in his interests and wanted him to ask questions and learn more. She encouraged him, and that idea is introduced right away, that his mom kind of is behind him. Now, he's a young boy, and we, of course, learn that he got sick with something called scarlet fever. Now, we don't really hear much about scarlet fever anymore because modern medicine has made it so scarlet fever really doesn't become an issue. I believe scarlet fever was something that would come from an illness that was untreated that we have medicines for now. So like high fevers and things that maybe in infections that we would now treat with antibiotics that hadn't been invented then. And so he gets scarlet fever as a young boy, and because of those high fevers, it hurts his hearing, and he ends up losing much of his hearing. And so when he's back in school, he's having a hard time, right? He probably can't hear the teacher. He was probably afraid to speak up. It says he didn't ask any questions at school. He'd sit there daydreaming about his next experiment. Now, his mother had been a teacher at one time, so she decides to take him out of school after only 3 months, probably 3 months of trying it there, and she must have realized she just wanted to teach him at home. And so he didn't leave school because he had scarlet fever, but he left. Possibly the fact that he couldn't hear well may have been part of her decision, but she wanted to teach him. She wanted to nurture him. And it says she made sure he received an excellent education, Shakespeare, the Bible, history, much more. He was studying great inventors such as Galileo. So his mother wasn't just kind of pretending to do homeschool with him. She really was completely investing herself in his education and helping him become who he became. All right. So then he reaches the age of 12. He's almost a teenager, and I'm sure probably maybe that his family didn't have a lot of money, so getting a job might have been a good idea so that he could have a little money. He wanted to do experiments, and that would cost something for the equipment and the chemicals. So he became a paper boy on a train, and he would sell newspapers. That was his job. He spent all day at the Detroit Library reading. Do you think he liked to read a little? He would go to the library and read all day long, dreaming about his next experiment. I think he liked to read. There's a clue. It wasn't just 20 minutes of quiet reading that you're forced to do, right? He would do it all day long and loved it. And so he was just soaking up that information. Then he'd come home on the train and sell papers. So he'd make money on this trip there on his way home, but he would spend his day reading and studying. And so he loved that. All right. Anyway, he asks the conductor, the head of the train, if he can set up a lab in the baggage car. So pretty soon he's doing experiments on the train, chemicals, gadgets, test tubes, all of these things. Well, everything was going okay until the train lurches, right? And things go flying, and a bottle of phosphorus, which is a chemical, apparently a flammable chemical, starts on fire, bursts into flames. Apparently, we had a fire on the train, and the conductor is not happy. He gets thrown off the train, loses his job. He's extremely disappointed. But his mother didn't stop him from doing his thing. He kept experimenting. He kept tinkering with all these gadgets. It says his experiments didn't work usually, but he always kept trying. I love that. We've talked a lot this year about not giving up. And sometimes some of the most successful people in real life are people that failed time and time again, and they just kept going. And I love that resilience that says, I'm not going to quit. And so then he gets another job. So he lost his job on the train, but then he goes to work for a railroad telegraph operator in Canada, it says. So he was soaking up all of this information. He learns about something called Morse code. That was like a code that would go over the telegraph lines, I think, or some kind of lines when you could send messages if you knew the code. Now, he would work the night shift. 7 p.m. means in the evening to 7 a.m. is in the morning. He'd work overnight, but he would sleep right in the station. I don't know if he was supposed to be sleeping, you guys. He sets up his lab in the back room. Everywhere he goes, he needs to have a lab. He is obsessed. So he could experiment in his off hours, apart from the occasional explosion. Once in a while, we had an explosion. Life was grand. He was supposed to send the signal 6 every hour on the hour to show the dispatcher at the next station that he was awake. But the long hours sometimes caught up with him and he would fall asleep. So the scientist in him had an idea. Soon Al had invented a device that hooked the telegraph key to a clock. When the hour struck, the minute hand of the clock sent the message 6 for him. It sent the message for him. It was doing his job while he was sleeping. It was a moment of pure genius, which quickly got him fired when his boss discovered he was sleeping on that job. So his plan was genius, which meant it took a lot of brain power to figure out. Sadly, it got him fired because he wasn't supposed to be sleeping. So second job he gets fired on for his so-called shenanigans, right? So then he just travels all over the place, one telegraph job to another. He's trying to improve the telegraph. By 21, he ends up in Boston, Massachusetts. Now people are calling him Thomas. He decides that he's going to be an inventor, and he set up his latest laboratory. He wanted to learn all about electrical forces. So by now his interest had kind of circled in on electrical things. He patented his first invention, the electrical volt recorder. But Congress, part of the government that makes the laws, did not like his invention. He couldn't sell it to them. So he invented something, but you have to have someone to buy it in order to make money, and he wasn't able to sell it to the people that would have needed to buy it. So he's an adult. He's working on these electrical inventions. His hearing gets worse. Now he's almost deaf, which means you can't hear at all. But did he give up? Nope. It said it did not hamper his creative abilities. He thought it even helped him concentrate because he wasn't distracted by noises. He ends up in New York City, and he has a lab in Newark, New Jersey. So he's out east, and then he gets some awful news. His mother had died. At age 24, he was very, very sad. He was without his mother. For a long time, he could not even speak of her. He would miss her letters, her advice, her encouragement. He owed everything to his mother. If you think about what he owed to his mother, she was the one that taught him. She supported him. She continued supporting him into his adult life. Somewhere it said that would continue to write him letters. Even as an adult, she was still there supporting. And she just never stopped. And he would miss her terribly. So she had been his person growing up. He ends up moving to New Jersey. He invents the carbon transmitter, which amplified the human voice like a microphone, making the telephone and microphone possible. He invented a machine that talked, a phonograph. You could record your voice. He invented an electric light bulb. I believe this is what he is most famous for. He also discovered the principle of sound waves, which made the radio possible. In 1887, he moved his laboratory to West Orange, New Jersey, developing the motion picture, movies, and much more. At one point, he had 250 people working for him and 45 different inventions going at the same time. He had all of these ideas, so instead of just working all by himself, he had a crew of people that he hired, a staff, and they were helping, I suppose, carrying out experiments and trying things with his ideas. Such strange, incredible inventions were coming out of his laboratory that people started to call him the wizard. All of these electrical things, so many inventions. He lived to be 84 years old, and he patented 1,093 inventions. Those are the inventions that got patented so that other people couldn't make them or copy him. Thomas would always remember his mother's encouraging words to ask questions. What is this? Why does that happen? How does it happen? Never stop asking questions. What a great lesson. He never gave up. He couldn't hear, but he became one of the most famous inventors that we've ever known, that the world has ever known. An amazing person, didn't give up. And just that encouragement to always keep learning. I hope you find that in you. You might not become an inventor, but I hope that you somehow find that love for learning and learn to nurture it. Whatever that area is that you're interested in, keep asking questions. Keep asking why. I remember when my son Ben was little, my firstborn, he would ask me, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? And then pretty soon, what's that turned into why? Why? How? How? He was so curious about the world, and he is a very, very smart mechanical kid. Now he's an adult. He wanted to know how everything works, and he's not an inventor, but he takes things apart and puts things back together, and he fixes things, and he has that mind that works like that, and he nurtured that. Growing up, he was always tinkering with things, and we encouraged him to do that. And you should follow those dreams and those interests, because you never know where it might lead you and what you might be able to do. And don't give up. When you try and it doesn't succeed exactly like you wanted it to right away, just keep moving on, keep pushing. And I think that's a great lesson that we can take from the life of Thomas Edison. So thanks for listening in. Reread the story if that is something that you think would help you, and have that storybook open when you are answering questions tomorrow about this biography. So look for details, look up the answers, prove them rather than just guessing, and let's get some good test scores to end the week strong. And then we are looking forward to seeing you back in person next week. So can't wait to see you. Take care.